Welcome back to the Oh wow, it's gonna be one of those
Wow.
nights. Welcome back to the Dime Gaming Bros podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Spencer, joined by Jacob.
Hello.
We are here to talk about video games and video game adjacent things like television shows and movies, and why all Smash players are pedophiles. So jumping
That's
right,
that's a new one on me.
that's a whole thing. Jumping right into my review for the month, I played Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the 2019 reboot / soft prequel of the original, Call of Duty for Modern Warfare. This was released in 2019. It's usually shortened to just be like MW 2019 for shorthand. It's obviously a Call of Duty game. It is a reboot, but based on where the story ends up, it's kind of a soft sequel. I mean, a soft prequel to the original game. It's like it is a flat out continuity reboot, but it uses a lot of elements in extremely different ways. And I am guessing that the sequel game does as well. So it's kind of like it's more like a reimagining, I think, than a strict reboot. So this was incredibly popular and had longevity for a while. This came out during the worst period of the Call of Duty franchise's history. It was after like 5 bad games in a row. And yeah, just lots of bad stuff, lots of false hope.
Was it actually 5 games? Because it was WW2.
Let me pull up the full list, and I can shoot off a tier list in like 3 seconds.
Let me shoot from the hip. You had Infinite Warfare. You didn't like Advanced Warfare. I didn't mind it, but that was kind of like the peak of, all right, no more Advanced Warfare. And then they did Infinite Warfare, and that was like everybody was sick of it. So you can kind of give that one 0.5 point. So that's 2.5. What else did you have? Vanguard came out after it. Black Ops 3. No, Black Ops 4. Black Ops 4. So there's 3 or 4 for you. What else? What am I missing?
So Ghosts was the first game that was like a considerable market down in quality. Black Ops 2 was like a fan favorite in 2012. I have a soft spot for Ghosts, but that's a lot of nostalgia speaking. It's not abysmal, but it's not good either. So Ghosts, Advanced Warfare, I have a slight soft spot for because it was the first, Jetpack game. It had something going for it. It still wasn't great.
I liked it though.
Yeah, it was all right. It's fine. Black Ops 3 was bad. The gameplay loop was better in and of itself, but it basically just turned into Titanfall. And had like the worst story on the planet. Infinite Warfare, I also kind of have a moderate soft spot for. It's also not good, but it's not the worst thing. But that was when people were like peak fed up with Call of Duty and its bullshit. World War II was arguably the worst one, and it was like the false messiah of like, guys, look, we're going back to World War II. It's boots on the ground. And then they wouldn't shut up about being boots on the ground, and the game was like the worst thing monetization-wise. It was abysmal. And then Black Ops 4 didn't even have a campaign. It was all multiplayer. So
also, World War II was poorly balanced.
It was
like
really
if you
bad.
got the same loadout, you just completely killed everybody, and everybody was running around with the same loadout. It was so horrible.
It was rough. And then Black Ops 4 was not good, and it was like half of a game. And then we get to Modern Warfare. It was immediately followed up by a mid game and then a bad game, but that's a story for another day. So this was like a big deal, and I still think it is a big deal. Like I said, I think 2 months ago, at least a few months ago, when I talked about the original Modern Warfare. That's, for me, I think still my favorite Call of Duty. Despite it having some pretty large like design flaws, it's a miracle that it worked, and it was a massive reinvention. I mean, it literally shifted the entire FPS genre for good reason, and it still holds up pretty well, campaign and multiplayer wise now. And I think that in a similar fashion, Modern Warfare 2019 also does that, but I don't think it's stuck as well. It has a similar amount of issues in my eyes, a similar like level of flaws in different areas, but the lessons that it should have been learned didn't stick. So just kind of jumping in with my negatives to get it out of the way. The optimization for this game is the fucking worst I've had in a Call of Duty game. Getting it installed and working correctly on a console took like 2 days. It was nuts. I have halfway decent internet, but it still took me forever to download stuff. Like usual, the disc is basically just a download key. The disc had like 60 gigs on it. Then you have to download like an extra 100 gigs over the Wi-Fi. It's all separated into different packages, which makes sense, but you need all of them to play it. Like it doesn't function if you don't have all of them. So the idea of it being modular doesn't work.
If you download everything, it legit comes out to like 400 gigabytes. It's horrible.
It's like half of an Xbox hard drive. It's nuts. I have not heard anything better about the PC version. It's just crazy. To its credit on that front, it does offer insane amounts of customization, but it also means it's kind of hard to just jump in, which bothered me a lot. It took me a while to get it going the first time. And for this playthrough, getting it reinstalled and reworking again was really pissing me off. The menu system, this is just a general gaming trend, but I think Call of Duty especially has done it the worst the past few games. The menus are all egregious, not because the user interface itself is bad, but because they're marketing the Warzone kind of third game mode battle royale thing as like the main allure. And it gives you a big fork in the road immediately of you can go into Warzone or now Warzone 2, or you can actually go play the game that you have on the disc. It's really annoying. And then there are entirely different like sub menus for the campaign, multiplayer, co-op, etc. Not in a like it basically feels like a game within a game within a game. Like I have to load up the Call of Duty launcher to play the game. And it really shouldn't feel like that on a console. If it's like that on PC, I'm not going to scream about it. I'm kind of expecting that. It's a PC version, but for a console game, it took me forever to get it functioning. Just downloading all of the packages, and then you have to go into the actual Xbox store menu, and then you have to download it, and then you have to wait, and then you have to restart the game after like each packet. It was nuts.
I don't remember if it was the last time I had Modern Warfare 19 downloaded, or I'm pretty sure it was. I had like one other game on my PS5, and Modern Warfare 19 kind of soft locked itself. It was like you have to update, but in order to do anything, even play the story, but it wouldn't update because it didn't have enough space. And I did have enough space, and I would try to update, and it would say it didn't have enough space, and I couldn't. It was horrible. It was like a terrible, vicious cycle that just led me to uninstall it because I couldn't win.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like I just wanted to play the campaign and like try to 100% that, and it wouldn't let me because Warzone had an update or something. Like
yeah, it's really rough.
Terrible.
I understand like the idea because so Warzone launched slightly after the game actually came out, and that was their big tent pole. It'll cross across the next few games, that big battle royale thing, which I'm not going to talk about really. I have no issues with it. I don't even really consider it a part of this game, even though this was like the original download key, quote unquote, whatever. I understand the idea of wanting, because the game is so big, like wanting to break it up in a way that's more manageable. And I'm pretty confident it received a large day one patch, but like put the campaign on the disc and then you download the multiplayer parts. Holy shit. Why is that so hard? Like, especially because this, I don't know if this is something that's across all platforms, but on Xbox, all of the achievements are exclusively for single player. So like basically the game is just the campaign is like kind of what it's telling you in a sense. It's very bizarre. It's a major hang up. Once the game is actually going though, literally zero issues. It's really bizarre. First coming from such a big studio and a very like experienced developer from Infinity Ward, I don't understand how this happened. Yeah, like there's different language packs you can download for the subtitles or the spoken language. Like there's a lot of optimization options, which I think are very good. And I'm glad that that's become kind of the new standard, even for console games. I just wish it didn't require you to set up so much of it. Like there was a bit better of a preset version of it. So I didn't have to spend like 30 minutes in settings before I felt comfortable loading the game up. So that's my biggest complaint across the board. There are other ones, but that's just the big one. It knocks like a full point off. Easy.
Haven't you said before, like they didn't compress the files properly, just like any other game, and
I think that's a part of it. I don't remember if I found that out like from a YouTuber 3 years ago or whatever, but that's what I was under the impression was that they didn't know how to they didn't compress files because there's 30 spoken languages in the game that are available as options and whatever. Like they just didn't shove the files into the little box like you're supposed to. Like a game that's not entirely comparable, but like an easy example is Doom Eternal is nearly on par visuals wise, not quite, but close. It's also extremely large. It has a very large campaign and a small multiplayer, which is kind of the inverse of this game. That game is like 40 gigs. It was a very big example of like you can compress your files down the right way and it not affect anything. I'm not expecting every game to do that, but like I don't have Warzone installed, the big part of this game. That's a whole chunk I don't have. And the game is still, I think, like 150 to 200 gigs. It's nuts. Just very bothersome. Moving on from that. While I mentioned it, the achievements, I just want to say flatly are wonderful. I'm an achievement hunter, so it's kind of a big deal for me. I appreciate the fact that they're not even can't like level specific, complete this level, you get an achievement. Every level, like most games, has a unique challenge, shoot these two people with the same bullet, whatever, stuff like that. And there's just things for completing the campaign on different difficulties and completing all the spec ops missions. And like that's it. It's the achievement numbers, like the percentage is very high. There's only like 20 achievements for the whole game.
So have you 100%ed it?
I'm close. I need to do more spec ops stuff, which is being very bothersome. I will get to that.
That stuff sucks.
The campaign ones, yes, I haven't done it on realism, which you don't have to get the last achievement, but I want to do it on realism.
I was having a problem probably like 6 months ago. I was trying really, really hard to 100% it, and it wouldn't give me the achievement use a Molotov on 4 bad guys. I checked YouTube and it was like, yeah, do it here. And I don't know if they patched it so that one thing didn't work, but that trophy just wasn't triggering. And I was just checking to see if you got it.
I did. Those ones are kind of annoying in that sense because there are some that they're worded vaguely. So it sounds like it's a kill, like stab 3 people in a row or whatever, like something like that. That's very simple, but it is actually locked to a particular part of the campaign. An easy example is there's an achievement for like killing someone with a direct hit from a smoke grenade, which means they have to be in last stand mode. You can do that in the game, but there's only one spot in particular where the achievement will actually trigger.
That was another one that I was having a heck of a time doing.
Yeah.
I still don't have it.
Yeah. It's not, there is a little bit of a delay on it, the achievement catching for me, but that's just because I'm paranoid. So I just sit there like watching the paint dry until it pops. I didn't have any real issues with that otherwise. I double checked the basic IGN guide is fine. This game just doesn't have a lot of those sorts of things, and I actually like that. It didn't make me go crazy. It allowed me to actually play the game and not obsess over achievement hunting. They just kind of, it's like 1 or 2 things per level. Just keep this thing in mind, do it, and then keep going along as you were. You don't have to spend the entire mission doing this one thing in particular, except the cinder block thing.
One of my favorite achievements from this list was the level where you fall down the pit and you are trying to escape from the cave. You have to escape only using the 45 that you fell with.
Yes.
And it's such a fun challenge. And I'm sure you'll get to it later, but the 45 sounds so distinct in the cave. It's so cool.
Yeah. I agree. Those sorts of things are nice. It's a little, I don't feel like I'm spoiling myself by double checking the achievement guide just to see where, like, what the thing is and what I need to do. I played this round launch ish, and I haven't touched it since. I just got very distracted. So I was just going through to redo stuff, basically. Um, yeah, while I'm here, just to get it out of the way, I played this playthrough on hard or veteran. So that's the third out of 4 difficulty levels. The next one up is realism, which is new for this game. It's the same as veteran. It just removes like the HUD elements, which is great. It's like playing with like, what is it, the blind skull in Halo or whatever. It's a unique challenge, and that kind of lends into the aesthetic of this game. For a Call of Duty game, it leans into a more tactical, vaguely realistic aspect.
Good luck clearing the house on that.
We'll see. So my playthrough this time around, to again go through all of the achievements, I think I missed 1 or 2 that I just kind of fucked up on. I took, I'd say, about 8 hours just to be extra thorough on veteran. The difficulty is simultaneously very well balanced and also kind of easy. It's very hard to describe, but the difference between the difficulty levels doesn't feel very distinct. The game kind of just plays the way it does. It's a couple of key areas, like your health basically, and like the amount of damage enemies do. Other than that, there are no major changes in like AI intelligence or detection or whatever, which I actually think is a better way to go about it, because this campaign isn't really designed to be. It's not really designed to be challenging. It's more designed to be like perplexing, I think, is a better way to put it. It's not supposed to be stupid hard. It's supposed to be vaguely thought-provoking and like a little bit more contemplative. It's still a Call of Duty game, but it leans into more of a tactical Rainbow Six ass aesthetic and gameplay style. And it works across the board for me. But yeah, the campaign is stupid short. Even for a Call of Duty campaign, they are usually 10 to 15 hours. This thing, you apparently can do it in like 4 on recruit if you just go for it, which I find very believable. I think that's kind of lame, but I would rather it be short and paced well, which I think it is, and somewhat consistent in quality rather than padded out. I'm okay paying full price for like, a 10-hour experience than I am 60 for like double that. I don't know. It's a me thing. I understand that some people felt like the value wasn't high enough because of the playtime, which I definitely understand. It just doesn't bother me that much. I'm kind of used to it. So yeah, the game, like I said, is a soft reboot prequel thing to the original. So you follow a small cast of characters, including the man, the myth, the legend, John Price, Mustache Man himself. Is that even a mustache? I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe that facial hair.
It is. It's not his mustache. It is not his mustache. It is his sexuality.
True. It's something. The Riz God, man. So yeah, it is you follow Price, Farah, and Hadir, who are freedom fighters in the fictional country of Urzikstan, which is a generic Middle Eastern country that borders on Russia. I don't need to elaborate much on that. You've also follow Alex Keller and Kyle Garrick. Some of those names should be familiar from the previous version of this universe. So Price is like he's the man, he's the guy on the box. He's British from SAS. Alex is from the CIA, I believe, and Kyle, who will later be known as Gaz in later games. So that's a whole thing. Is also British. I believe he's from the British Special Forces. And Farah and Hadir are, like I said, they're basically rebels. You follow it's a fairly small cast of characters, despite it being a multiple country spanning game. And you basically, the Russians are doing bad things and invading countries they're not supposed to. This game hasn't gotten more timely at all. And there's multiple factions within the country of Urzikstan. There are the general like rebel insurgent group, the freedom fighters basically, and you also have what they call a terrorist group, which is moderately inaccurate, but whatever. Which is the very radical version of the same thing, where they don't care about you know civilian deaths and whatnot. It's a bit of a generic setup, admittedly, despite this game wanting to have a lot more nuance than most Call of Duty games. The military propaganda still comes in strong on this one. It's just not quite as bad as usual. So someone steals a bunch of gas to try to kill the Russians. It's a big mystery which faction has what, and it's just a bunch of stuff, basically all focused around like effectively mustard gas. There's a dictator who leads the Russian military, whatever. The villains are fine. This is I think my second major complaint. It's not the end of the world because, again, for a Call of Duty game, they're fairly serviceable. They at least vaguely, like, the factions make sense. I just personally do not like how they're represented because this is maybe news for our listeners. I don't like imperialism actually from anybody. And that includes the CIA. So this game is very politically muddy in a sense, and it's not really doing it on purpose. It's mostly because every video game, movie, etc., that portrays the U.S. military and other military factions, they get funding to do it. Whether it's directly or indirectly, that's just kind of part of the deal. If you want to say make a movie where you show U.S. tanks, if you want to physically get a tank to show, you need to make sure you're not portraying things too critically. It's a part of U.S. hegemony. Don't even get me started. That's just a general thing. So this game kind of gets a little muddy on that front because it simultaneously, like basically any game about war, it wants you to think that the freedom fighters in the country that the U.S. and other Western powers are quote unquote assisting with bringing democracy, basically. You want to think that there are two groups of fighters in that country. You have the freedom loving, democracy loving, we don't want to kill civilians, we won't use bombs type people. And then you have what people love calling anarchists in media that aren't actually anarchists. They're the chaos people, and it's everything does this. It just very bothers me because I'm really into this sort of stuff. It's fine here. It's just a thing I have to mention because the game tries to take itself so seriously. There is one particular thing that I have to say is actually quite egregious. It's not killing civilians. It's not bombs. It's not gas. It's the fact that the fucking game tries to paint over. This is a pretty well-known thing. It tries to paint over the highway of death. And basically during a war, the U.S. did a lot of war crimes, and nothing really happened about it. And it's a real place. It's near a river in Kuwait, and the game basically just says that was actually the Russians, Lamau, and it's really bad. Like that's genuinely very despicable. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a choice by like the story writers. But what the fuck?
That's what I was about to say, is that I haven't done all my research, so I could just be naive, I guess. But I've always seen the conflicting tones in this game and just written it off as the writers wanted to tell a story very opposite of what their funders wanted to hear.
I agree. So, that's usually when I trust to some extent like a writing team and something like this happens, I usually assume it wasn't, there's a level of it's effectively coercion. I understand that's going to be part of the medium. It just bothers me because sometimes it's done really egregiously. Like most of this game, it's messy, and I think it's not accurate to how real world politics works, but it's not that bad. It's at an acceptable level of bullshit. But then on
the flip side, it's got people like me, listening to YouTubers or whatever, bringing this up, and it makes me do my research and learn what a highway of death is. And it's like, oh, actually, it's not how the game portrays it. So
It's
I don't
weird.
know. That's kind of why I don't rant and rave against the game because of
No.
it. It seems like someone really wanted to include that, and they were told, okay, but just flip who was the bad guy, and they said, okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's an easy specific example in this game that I think that is explicitly how you should not do it. I like the fact that this game particularly it specifically and like kind of uniformly wants to use real world conflicts, particularly in Syria, as its setting. Like the factions are kind of reimagined and Call of Dutyified, but like there's clearly real world inspiration, and I think most of it's done fairly tactfully. It's like, well, there were like entire factions of the local population that were just like squadrons of women in prisons and like whatever. Like I think that stuff is actually done pretty well here. But it's also inspired by a bunch of bombings that happened in London, which happened in this game. But then that stuff I think is fine. But like something so explicit as that, where it literally paints over what actually happened, and it's like that's my line. I think that's just sloppy, if nothing else. If you're gonna make your damn U.S. propaganda, make it sneaky, okay? Jeez, have standards. Um, okay, so general other story bits. I actually like all of these characters, arguably more than I like the versions that are the versions of some of these characters that are present in the original. Um, I like that the cast is small, and I like that this at the end of the game they basically do the whole the war is just beginning thing, and it's corny, but I actually think it worked kind of well with this game because this is primarily between it's a proxy war. They explicitly say it a bajillion times. It's like, okay, you guys can go in, but don't kill Russians with US weapons, because then they'll find us. Like it's very it despite including bombings and planes and tanks, it's kind of low key for a Call of Duty campaign. It's a lot more stealth oriented than usual. So I think that's a good entry point to a new sub-series, basically. I have a massive crush on Farah. Don't ask questions, just accept it. Hot. I really like this version of Gaz. He's only given the nickname Gaz at the end of the game as a joke, but like I guess your POV character, obviously it flips between all of them, but like the most naive, headstrong character with the least personality is, your self-insert character, and that's Gaz or Kyle Garrett. I quite like him here. He's British, which is funny because British people are funny. I really like what they did with the characters here. I have this is I guess a remotely hot take. I actually like this price more than the original. I think the original voice actor is more iconic, easy. Like I hear that name, I hear that voice in my sleep. But I think this version of the character is actually given some remote level of nuance. He's more than a caricature of like, wow, look, mustache man, and I think that's important for this.
I hear that voice in my sleep, and that's why I have morning wood.
True. The way he smiles at the camera. Oof. Ooh. I really like the cast of characters. There could definitely be some shoring up of some stuff here and there. It's not really a spoiler because it's a few years old, but Alex temporarily defects from the CIA to help the freedom fighters because the freedom fighters, like the US does, are like, Lamau, you guys were now labeled as terrorists because we don't like you. And I like that. I just wish the game was more focused on that. And I know that it's never going to be, but I want a game actually about that. I like an easy way to describe this game story-wise in general is it's anti-war, but it's not anti-imperialism. It does the wow, look, war is messy, and especially modern warfare, using drones and bombs in cities and crap is messy, and it should be disturbing. And it plays that fairly well, especially for a COD game. But it still has just enough gung ho, let's go kill this Russian, where it's like, I don't know about that. And that's coming from, I have no issues with portraying the Russian military as being evil orcs because they are. Like, current state of affairs, this is not a hot take at all. They literally, like, across the still current invasion of Ukraine, they just go across pillaging villages and like raping school children. It's fucking abhorrent. I have no issues calling them orcs. So I'm fine with it being a caricature of Russians here. Just don't make it about Russians like a people. Make it about the Russian military, and that's fine because they are dogs. But also, why is the CIA like sketchy, but not like sketchy, sketchy? You know, the game, the whole time you're getting like informants and you're like, ooh, this stuff is weird. And I don't know if this is actually legal or okay. And everything we do is illegal. Ooh, but then they don't do anything about it. They're just like, oh, I guess this is what it is. And that's the thing that I'm always going to have a criticism of any type of war media in like being critical of the United States. And it's never going to not be like that, but I'm always going to be bothered by it. There's a little tease at the end, which I thought was kind of cute. They're like, oh, I want to put together a team. And then it's, you know, 141 from the original game. Whereas that's kind of how this is sort of a prequel. Yeah, there's a little bit at the end that's very much so sequel bait, but I'm okay with it because it's a big, dumb action movie game, and that's fine. Um, so no real qualms there. There's also like a post credit scene after you watch all the credits, which is a tease of the villain for the next game, I guess, maybe not, who's the villain of the original first game. And it's like, all right, I see where you're going with this. I'm fine with that. Um, I don't mind all of that sort of stuff. I really feel like they didn't overplay the nostalgia angle that much. They actually recontextualized the characters enough. There are some characters that are pretty much entirely different. Like, I'm hearing a lot of that in the sequel game as well. Like, Price is very similar. He's just given nuance. Gaz is pretty fucking different. Alex is an original character. I'm pretty confident. Like, there's enough flipping stuff around that I think it definitely it doesn't just overplay the, oh, you remember this, don't you, type stuff. Um, yeah, so the campaign is very solid across the board story wise. Um, the performances are all really good. The motion capture work is spectacular. On a technical level, the cutscenes are in engine, and the difference between pre-rendered and like rendered in real time and the actual gameplay is minute. It's insane how good this thing looks. The big difference is that like pre-rendered cutscenes have like, you know, the bars on the top of the fucking screen. Like the screen turns off and then turns back on for a minute. So the transitions aren't smooth, but the character models are identical. The frame rate for me stayed the same. Apparently this was not what it was like at launch at all. I had no sloughing. I had no lagging of cutscenes. Everything was a buttery smooth 4K 60 across the board. Looked disgustingly good. The facial captures are fantastic. The voice synchronizing with the lip movements was really good. I don't know what parts were motion capture and what parts were just 3D renders, but like, holy shit, this thing I still think is the best looking Call of Duty game. Not just because of its aesthetics, but because of like the technical quality on display here is bonkers. General presentation of the campaign is very good. I like how quick the pace is, despite again it being very short. I like how little time there is between game cutscene. It's pretty snappy. All of the levels are drastically different lengths, which is very annoying. But it plays pretty well. The menu itself, the UI for the campaign is fine. It's nothing special, but it's not egregious like the rest of the game. I like that you can go back and revisit just the cinematics because they really want to flex how pretty this game is. So that was cool. Load times were snappy. After, you know, I also use quick resume for most of this because I'm playing it on the Series X. So I barely had to worry about load times like at all. It's like a minute sometimes between like going in and out of a level. So no big deal. No crashes, no stuttering, very little pop in. Genuinely blown away by how good this thing looks. additional presentation notes. Sarah Schachner did the original score slash soundtrack for this game, and it fucking slaps hard. There's some nice reworkings of older Modern Warfare themes, but it's for the most part very original stuff. I really like it. I think it's hummable, and that's the barometer for good themes is like, can I remember it and can I hum it? So great stuff, all very straightforward. The missions on the menu when you exit out of a campaign mission, there are rating systems given sort of for each mission depending upon your general behavior, I guess, because it is modern warfare and a lot of these missions take place in civilian environments or domestic places. The game sort of wants you to not commit war crimes. So when you don't shoot civilians accidentally or intentionally, you wait until people are actively hostile towards you before shooting, et cetera, et cetera. The game rewards you with a couple of collectibles. They're just like multiplayer skins, which is fine. The grade system is really bland. I would have preferred if it was like an XP based system for I don't know, something towards multiplayer other than like a couple of skins, but whatever, it's something. I like that that is an element of the gameplay is encouraging you to not commit war crimes, although you still commit a lot of them in this game anyways. I wish there was more to it than that. I like what they did. It feels very half-assed. It's like half of the missions you can kill civilians, and most of those it doesn't really matter other than affecting your score. Like it doesn't keep you from completing the mission. It doesn't. There's a couple missions where it'll just kill you. And, it does the whole "what the fuck are you doing? Stop!" and then the mission ends. But for the most part, there's some optional dialogue bits here and there where one of your squad mates will be like, "Dude, what the fuck?" I don't think it's enough, especially considering this game has multiple levels where you literally point guns at hostages. I really think they should have been a bit more thorough with that. But again, Call of Duty expectations. I don't want everything to just come back to like I have low expectations because big dumb game, but like you can only expect so much from a property like this. And that's fine, I guess. Campaign gameplay is mostly linear, like a usual Call of Duty game. There are, I'd say maybe 25% of the missions have at least non-linear sections. Not just you have 3 paths to move forward, but you can actually tackle some of your objectives in a non-linear fashion. And when it comes to this type of an experience, I'm okay with this mostly being really linear because it's extremely curated. The quality of the combat encounters and how everything comes together to make moments works really well, and it seems dynamic enough that I'm okay with it not, letting me tackle literally everything however I want to. There's a balance to be had. When the game does open up, particularly my favorite level, Going Dark, the second to last level of the game, you're basically dropped into a big compound, and you have couple of objectives. You need to search multiple buildings for hostages and find some stuff and whatever. And the game kind of adapts to how you play a little. So you can shoot out lights, you can turn off the power, you can turn off generators, you can shoot the armored car. There's a bajillion different ways that you can go about this stealth level.
It kind of feels like the Metal Gear Solid 5 prequel level thing, Ground Zero or whatever that was.
A little bit, yeah.
Like it's the Call of Duty version and it's smaller, but it feels that like that's the best comparison.
Yeah, it's enough that it makes me happy. Whereas, yeah, pretty much every player is either going to slowly creep throughout everything, kill every single enemy combatant before going into the necessary areas, or they're just going to blitz it. I still like being given the option between the two, and I had a lot of fun being slow and stealthy about it. Like, 1, trying to kill all the enemies to get an achievement, and 2, just not being detected. It's fun. I spent probably an hour in this level with night vision goggles on the whole time. It was really fun. That includes a little meter that tells you like how exposed you are in terms of light levels, which I think is nice. It only comes in handy, I think, basically just for this level. It's on screen in other levels, but it doesn't really do much for those. But I think that's a nice little touch. Again, being able to shoot out the lights, having Price be your eyes in the sky or on a hillside with a sniper rifle, occasionally calling out targets, shooting out some lights for you. It made for a really fun level. The stealth actually works, which is the unexpected part because they're like, I used to be a big Assassin's Creed guy. The stealth in those stealth games, even in the better ones, barely works. And here in a Call of Duty game, unexpectedly, it works really well. But it doesn't feel like it's trying to do like all gillied up all over again. There's been a certain, I do not remember what video I watched, but somebody made this comparison. I think it's pretty apt for this game. Most Call of Duty games want to have an all gillied up moment for every game since all gillied up the mission. None of them do it well again. This game doesn't really do that, despite it coming closer, I think accidentally. It aims more so for a Mile High Club all the time, which was the mission where you're on the plane and you have like 30 seconds to kill everyone. It's weird, but it feels more of an apt comparison for this game. You're when the encounters are actually tactical, which is about 50% of the time. You need to be quick and snappy, despite the fact that you are slowly crouch crawling through a house. And I really like that vibe to it. The additional abilities or features that have been added for this game includes mounting, which is basically just leaning against something and then aiming your gun over it. It works fine. It's useful sometimes. I do forget it's there for the most part. Sliding has been reworked a little bit. I think it works much better here. And in general, I'm pretty confident the movement speed has just been slowed down like drastically, at least for some levels. Like if it's a stealth level, it caps out your max speed at like 70% of normal. So you can't like break immersion, which I have mixed feelings about.
That's why I love the multiplayer in Modern Warfare 19 so much, is because movement speed is so slow. It feels really good.
Yeah, I have some mixed feelings on like forcing you to do that during some stealth sections, whereas the game wants you to have options, but it also wants to hold your hand, whatever. It was something I noticed right off the bat. Like the first mission, you're standing all the way upright and you're walking like 2 miles an hour. It was just like, oh wow, this is going to take a minute. Most of the levels don't do that. It's just every once in a while that'll pop up. The gunplay. Oh my God. This is disgusting. The gunplay is responsive. It's not snappy. I would say it's not sluggish either. They wanted to lean into the tactical angle of this fairly well, very strongly, and I think they did it fairly well during campaign sections. Everything is responsive, but it's not. You can't just be like snap shooting everybody, regardless of whatever weapons you have. Hip firing is almost entirely unusable for most weapons except like shotguns. But ADS isn't just a tiny little fraction of a second. It actually takes a second to lower the gun. And I think it encourages the slower movement speed, which maybe is just a genuine strategy to like make the campaign length more reasonable. They might have just been like, oh crap, we should slow you down. But I think it works pretty well. It encourages you to at least somewhat think through your encounters a little bit. You can still run and gun if you want to for most of it, but if you want to do something different, it doesn't punish you for that. Whereas Call of Duty in most campaigns punishes you for not running and gunning. I don't feel shitty using cover in this game. Whereas normally it's boring and drab if, like, say you're playing on veteran in a bad level where you just have to play like it's a shooting gallery sitting behind a box. This game actually makes that gameplay fun, and it feels intentional, even if it probably isn't all the time. The guns, like across the board, are very diverse. There's a lot of real guns. There's some fictional ones as well. The models, like the scans, are disgustingly good. The 3D representations in game are so gorgeous. It's nuts. There's a lot of variants of each weapon with different sights and silencers, or just different attachments, which is really cool. The sound effects are easily at their best here. The way that they did pretty much real recordings for every single one of these weapons or its real world equivalent. The multi-directional audio especially really comes in handy. You don't always notice, especially if you're running and gunning, where gunshots are coming from. But if you want to listen, you can pick out people from very far away. And I really like that. I like the fact that I wear headphones actually coming in handy. Crazy, I know, right? The guns are just hot. There's this, when 343 took over Halo, they reworked a lot of stuff and a lot of people didn't like it. And I understand pretty much all of it. And a lot of the weapon sounds that they did are not good because they don't sound like the guns used to. But the quality of the recordings were this massive step up in terms of like fidelity. And that's what this seems like. The guns sound, one, real because they're mostly real recordings. And the fidelity is huge. It's not... I could not... every single gun actually sounds distinct for once. It's not like there's 10 gun sounds. There's like 50. I could probably pick out which weapons enemies are using if I really wanted to based off of sound. I'd have to think, but like I feel like I could do that. And that says a lot about the detail that they put into it. I think the campaign has a decent mix level-wise, or missions, in terms of gameplay styles. You have a few very linear, close corridors sections. You have a few kind of open levels, and you have a lot of cinematics. There was no real lacking level from where I'm sitting. There are two flashback levels. You play as Farah when she was, I believe, 10 and 15. They're the weaker ones, but they're not bad by any means. The melodrama gets a little slapped on here. Say when you're playing as like at maybe 10 years old, maybe I think it's less than that. You have to play this really awkward stealth section, jumping or like crawling around your house trying to kill a Russian soldier with like screwdrivers. I like it and I get the idea, but it does play out very weird. Considering again, war crimes are being committed in the background and your parents just died. It's really weird. Like the dissonance between the gameplay and the presentation is weird. But it was fine. And then the section that you play as I think about 15 or 20, where you get out of prison and you liberate a bunch of prisoners and stuff, and you meet Price for the first time, was a really good level. I think their placement in the campaign was kind of awkward to have. It's like out of the 14 missions, I think it's like 11 and 13 or something like it's like 10 and 12 or whatever. It's really awkward placement. But it's kind of nitpicky. That's honestly about it campaign wise. I think it has some serious flaws in the writing department and like the disparity between who wants to tell what story is very messy, but I think it's okay for a Call of Duty title. It's within the acceptable margins. I really like the characters. I like the presentation. I prefer this angle to the game in general. I like the shift to be 10% more serious. Multiplayer is a mixed bag. The maps are not good. They're not good at all. So before launch, the past like 5 titles had really bad maps, just the 3-lane, all the same maps. Some of them were really big and some of them were really small, but they were always pretty much 3-lane maps. I believe this game launched with about 10 maps, and I think it's been given, 4 for like regular multiplayer rounds since launch. So the ones that have been released post-launch are definitely better. They're not abysmal, but it is disappointing. Some of them rely on gimmicks a little bit too much. They're too asymmetrical, where it's like painfully awkward. where whereas the 3-lane maps are generic and they make everyone just run at each other. Like there's a couple of maps where they're so asymmetrical in their geography or the unique map quirks, push this button, a door closes shit, where like even if you had equal teams, I really don't feel like you could have an equal match. They really prefer one spawn side to another. And the spawns themselves are still very bad. That's never been fixed since launch. You spawn way too close to enemies, and the spawning in process takes too long. The respawn timer is too long, and the time to kill, while fine for gameplay when you're just loading in and your character hasn't even pulled the gun off their back yet, is bullshit. And it can be incredibly frustrating. The gunplay carries over mostly the same. There are definitely technical details like damage numbers that are different. I'm not smart enough to know the difference. I'm not that much of a Call of Duty player. I don't know the difference. I just know that the balancing is definitely different than it is in campaign. Some of the maps are fine. It's such a weird grab bag of quality that's kind of disappointing. It's a different problem than it was previously, but it's not fixing the problem. From where I'm sitting,
especially hate the map that is in the desert with the oil pipes and the boxes everywhere. That's the worst one, I think.
I agree.
Is it Rust?
No.
Dust?
I don't remember.
Something like that.
Rust is a classic MW2 map. It's very weird. Where is it? I appreciate that the map count is within an acceptable range for me. Obviously, more maps is usually better, but it's enough that it doesn't feel like I was getting undersold. There's a couple of unique maps that are unique to a couple of game modes. So underneath your main like multiplayer just game modes, you have your normal stuff, team deathmatch, CTF, etc. There are gunfight, which I really liked. It's a 2v2 mode with small maps. I really like that. That's like classic weird Call of Duty bullshit where you spawn with random weapons and perks each round and you just go ham. I like that. It's not going to sustain a multiplayer, but it's definitely fun to load in. And people still play it, even though it's been a few years, which I appreciate. There's also Ground War, which I fucking hate. It's their big mode. It's like 20v20 bullshit. I'm impressed that the engine can handle 20, like a total 40 player count, but it's miserable. Call of Duty isn't Battlefield and it's not built for this. It just doesn't play well. It's everyone. Call of Duty players are socialized not to play like Battlefield players. You can't change that. You can improve it, but you can't just make all the players play for objectives on really big maps. It just doesn't work. Even though the gunplay does actually include projectile weapons for once, unlike most COD games where everything's hit scan, you actually have to lead shots sometimes. It's still, the time to kill is still too short and it's still not telegraphed enough. Whereas the big modes are miserable for me. On a technical level, they're still pretty impressive. I will give it that, but it's not fun. There's also unique maps for that because they're big. I believe each of the multiplayer seasons released at least 1 or 2 ground war maps, which again, I appreciate the effort. I just really don't like the game mode. It's just not fun. The game also returned kill streaks. So instead of it was, I think, about 5 games again, where it was score streaks. You have to, it was trying to encourage people to play objective, but it didn't work. You have to get certain cumulative scores to get new perks. They did both in this game, and I think it works much better. You do return to kill streaks, although you can use chlorine gas as a kill streak, and that does feel like it's in poor taste, I will admit. At least the nuke button is so over the top, it's silly. When it's using like, you could just use mustard gas. That feels kind of weird, but that's just a me thing. The pick 10 and pick 20 system is long gone. Thank God. Those systems were mostly bullshit. The gunsmith create a class thing is so much better here. I'm not wicked into multiplayer. I think I've put in 30 hours into this game in total. It was probably like 20 when I got the game, and I somewhere around 10 recently just to get refamiliarized with it. You could spend a lot of time in this, and I like that. It's very in depth. The different attachments and combinations you have for different guns is fantastic levels of variance, but also I don't want to spend 10 hours customizing my gun. I want to play the fucking game.
Some of the best fun I've had in this multiplayer was the game type. It's kind of like Counter-Strike, where you have 2 or 3 different bomb sites and you have to plant the bomb.
Yeah.
That was surprisingly fun in this game, and I don't exactly know what makes that different from all the other games that do it.
I have no idea. That's where my smart assery about random shit does not come in handy. I'm not technically versed enough to understand how they make things enjoyable beyond the basics. Yeah. The big thing for the multiplayer, which made it more enjoyable for me or more tolerable, despite the fairly large failings, like the maps being kind of mid, and some of the modes being kind of unbearable, is the fact that it actually had a pretty solid battle pass system. This was sort of a return to form. Call of Duty had gotten into some deep shit for a few years because they had so many really egregious loot boxes for I think it was 3 entries in a row. Modern Warfare 2 being the worst version of that, by a long shot. They would do loot boxes, in-game currency, purchasable guns, and pay to win all at the same time. It was insane. So this game, they promised well ahead of launch that none of the purchasable items in-game would affect gameplay drastically, which is true. None of the guns are locked behind a paywall, including the ones that were added post-launch. They are all earned via gameplay, and the in-game store is just for cosmetics. While the cosmetics are all gross, icky, Christmas weed skins, that's where we are now. Is it purchasable cosmetics? Fuck it, whatever. That's the bar for in-game stores right now because they're so bad. There's a paid and free version of the battle pass for each season. I believe it's 6 seasons in total over the 3-year lifespan of this game. It's fine. You earn COD points. You can unlock some stuff. It's nothing special, but I don't get FOMO. And me personally, I get FOMO really bad about stuff. It's a miracle. It's a good thing that I'm poor, because otherwise I would be a whale for video games. I would be buying so much shit. I get really bad FOMO. But with this game, I don't. So I guess it's bad for them, but it's good for me because I like earning the stuff, but I don't feel like I have to. I can just customize my character a little bit and then play the game. And I think that's good. I think it's a decent balance, and that's fine. Spec Ops. Yeah. Jacob just gave me a big thumbs down. Okay, so it's not as bad as everyone said, but it's still pretty bad.
A big thumbs down with a stinky face.
Okay, fair. So Spec Ops is one of Call of Duty's longer standing third modes. It's the PvE hub. If you don't want to play campaign or you don't want to play multiplayer where it's PvP, there's either going to be a zombies mode or Spec Ops. I prefer Spec Ops because I'm not 10. It was introduced in Modern Warfare 2. It was basically just campaign missions ripped out of the game with a star rating system for time, which was fine enough then.
Was it Ghost that had
Extinction?
But aliens?
Yes, and I loved it, and everyone hated it.
Yeah, I actually
liked that. It was fun. And it didn't. I didn't feel like I had to finish it, unlike zombies, where it's you do 18 hours of hunting for one switch, and then you get a 30-second cutscene.
I actually Ghost was my first Call of Duty on a real system, not the Wii, and it didn't take me a whole lot to beat Extinction, but it was still a lot of fun. So
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely shorter than it probably should have been, but I could still go back and play that and have fun.
yes,
Um, yeah, so Spec Ops is more up my alley. It's Modern Warfare 3 added on a lot more stuff. There are different rating systems for like time, total kills, etc. There are just it's a mission from the campaign, but isolated. And there's also a lot of original stuff, and that was really good. It disappeared for a while. And this game brought it back, and it's mostly bad. I'm glad it's not a zombies mode because every Call of Duty game had a zombies mode for like 10 years, and I really didn't like most of them. Um, just really oversaturated. This was temporarily time locked to PlayStation consoles for, I believe, a year, and that's bad. Mega cringe, sussy, not good. Time locking a whole mode to a console exclusive is some fucking bullshit. Give the PlayStation player some extra skins, but don't lock a whole mode. That's very stupid. Now it's on everything, but that was a big deal, especially at launch. So there's two branches of Spec Ops. There is survival mode, which is horrid. It's survival mode. Every game has one now. I blame Gears of War for this. Usually they're fun. I don't. I really like. Of course, I really liked ODST's version of it, Firefight. I think Halo needs to go back to that, but I not every game needs a survival mode where you just face hordes of enemies. And this one's pretty bad. It fucks the gameplay entirely, whereas most of this gameplay is at least intended to kind of be vaguely tactical-ish. Even in the multiplayer where you can kind of go crazy, it still tries to nudge you in that direction. You can't play like that in survival mode because there are so many enemies. You have to run and gun and go like ballistic fucking no scope 360 MLG shit, and it's miserable. Not good, very bad. Survival is just trash. Regular Spec Ops is not okay. It launched in a really bad state. It only had one mission with no difficulty options and no ratings, and that was bad. They fixed that. So I think I played 2 out of the 4 so far. They're still really hard. They're not balanced at all. The difficulties are not good. The rating systems are fine. It's just 4 large campaigns, so like a couple of missions strung together. It's like Battlefield did this, I think, for Battlefield 1 and 5. It's just a couple of shorter missions strung together, but whatever.
I got lucky trying to get the trophy of doing all of them, and it was like the last third. I found a really good group that just speed ran the whole thing. I couldn't even finish the first objective, and the mission was over, and it was fantastic. It was my favorite memory from Spec Ops.
Damn. Yeah, it's just, it feels incredibly lazy. It feels like this was either a last minute addition or they had to overhaul it right before launch, and they weren't able to test it at all. It's so wildly imbalanced, it's not even funny. There are some reused environments from the campaign. There are some original stuff, which is fine. Yeah, like I said, there's that, or you can just play the missions themselves specifically, which I think like a full year after launch by the time they added that in.
It's also just kind of Warzone light.
Kind of. It's not supposed to be, but that is what it plays like. It because the most of the environments are so open and stuff, it just kind of plays like a battle royale map. The thing that I did appreciate on it though, for Spec Ops, and I think in a better Spec Ops mode, this would have been a really good idea across the board, is it includes some more lore tidbits. My favorite thing, the little lore poop nuggets. There are cutscenes for these, and I give multiplayers a lot of shit for including these in their live service like seasons for regular multiplayer, because you can't revisit them easily for the most part. Like after the season's over, you can't go back to those cutscenes or whatever. and they're usually used as a crutch for like post-launch campaign content. If this was more like Spartan Ops and Halo 4, I would have been much happier. Even though Spartan Ops is pretty rough and it's really recycled content, I still like that it's like 10% of the main campaign just kind of tucked away in a corner. There's some more lore stuff. This is how we're introduced to a lot of the rest of Task Force 141 before the sequel game. Is they're planted in like the live service special ops like cutscene stuff, which I think is neat. I wish it was done better, but I that's why I played it. Was not for the gameplay. I played it because I wanted to like get the rest of the whatever story bits were left in the game. Which I guess is fine. So total playtime across the board is probably about 40 to 50 hours for both of my times I've played the game, for everything that I've discussed. The first time would have been probably about 30. This one was around 50. It was 10-ish for the campaign, like I said earlier, and then another 10-ish for multiplayer and some spec ops just to get refamiliarized with it. I bought this for, I believe, $30 new on Amazon about a year ago, probably. I don't know what happened to my original copy. I think when I sold my last Xbox to Colin, I sold the game because he didn't want it. So I had to go buy a new copy about a year ago. But I still think that's a good deal. I would have been irritated if I had bought it day one for the full 60 and had played it like in that kind of semi-working state. I think originally I had picked it up like 6 to 9 months post-launch. Yeah, I like this one a lot. It just has some like crippling flaws that really drag down what could have been like unanimously the best Call of Duty game. It throws some mud on it, and it's kind of hard to shake that off. So I'd say a rung below the original Modern Warfare, like collectively. I would rather go back to this one because I think I had more fun in the campaign because of the unique gameplay encounters and stuff. But the tech issues and the optimization is bad. And the multiplayer, because of all of its issues, isn't a great experience. Whereas Modern Warfare is flawless, perfection. But it's like not even a real game. You know? If that makes any sense. Like they're not even the issues aren't comparable. So it's hard to compare them. It's, maybe a toss-up. Definitely upper echelon for Call of Duty, though.
I'm pretty sure it's my favorite.
I think you should play Black Ops 2.
True. I've tried, and it's still very hard to get my hands on because it's still $60 on Steam.
Oof.
And it's very hard to find a PlayStation 3 copy
that isn't brutal.
Scratched to death.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even those are still like $10 to $20 for an old copy.
Yeah. Jumping straight into the news from Polygon.com, a new, very different style of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game is currently in development. An adaptation of The Last Ronin, the 2020 graphic novel that told a grim, futuristic story about the Turtles. Like the comic, The Last Ronin video game adaptation will be a darker, more mature take on the typically colorful Ninja Turtles, according to Doug Rosen, Senior Vice President for Games and Emerging Media at Paramount Global, the rights holders for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In an interview with Polygon last week, Rosen likened the upcoming third-person action role-playing game to Sony's recent God of War titles and said it will be authentic to the story of The Last Ronin arc, which is set in a future where only one of the turtles has survived. While other TMNT games, like last year's Shredder's Revenge, are typically about playing all four turtles and sometimes their allies Splinter, April O'Neil, and Casey Jones, The Last Ronin will be primarily a single-character game. Though Rosen posited that other characters could be playable in flashback sequences similar to how the comic series plays out, the primary action is said to center on the only surviving turtle. This is exciting. Hopefully it's better than the comic.
I think this is it's weird because I want to be excited for this because it's something unique and cool, but also this is so early in development and they are so clearly just trying to like ape off of the popularity of the comic. I think this might not even end up getting made. I think it might end up getting canceled in about a year because they realize that like the comic is not going to carry this game.
Right. It doesn't really say what kind of game it is besides likening it to God of War, but it's like
so a third person semi-linear drama.
Yeah, but that turtle, I forget which one it is, goes off and sits under a magical peach tree in Japan and listens to the teachings of Master Oogway and learns all of the fighting styles from his brother's ghosts, and then comes back and has all those fighting styles. So are you going to be able to change fighting styles? Are there skill trees? I have so many questions.
This smells like it's going to be a really bad skill tree system. At first I was intrigued by this, but the more I think about it, it sounds like this is a really easy way to make a shitty game.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say that they could use Ghost of Tsushima's style where you hold a trigger and then select X, triangle, circle, square, or to change forms. I think Neo did the same thing actually. To change what your fighting style is. But there's so little information about this. It's impossible to get excited for it.
Yeah. From IGN.com, almost a year after announcing its return, the Entertainment Software Association announced that its members that this year's Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3, has been canceled, and IGN can confirm. Two sources have confirmed to IGN that the organization announced the cancellation via an email sent out to its members today. Well, a couple of weeks ago. The email said that while E3 remains a beloved event and brand, that the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. The ESA concludes the email by reiterating its commitment to advocacy work. It does not mention undertaking the show again in future years. It's dead. E3 is just dead.
Yeah, this has been brewing for freaking a decade now.
Yep. Yep. They didn't officially say it's all dead, but it's 100%.
I mean,
it's 100% all dead.
The big three companies have been working on killing E3 for as long as I've been paying attention, with just by running their own press conferences and doing their announcements on their own time, like when they're ready. It's like it's been a matter of time, and the time has come.
The time has come. From insidergaming.com.
Hey, it's
my turn. Gagagoo.
From insidergaming.com. According to a new report, Warner Brothers Games has recently canceled multiple in-development video games at its subsidiary developer, TT Games. As detailed by Nintendo Life, all one word, multiple sources have confirmed the closure of several projects at the studio. One such title was Project Marley, a Lego Disney game that would have included worlds such as The Jungle Book, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Winnie the Pooh. The project, which is claimed to have been canned in 2022, saw the players shifting between an overworld and themed dungeons. While exploring, they would battle to rid the world of a purple corrupting force, a storyline that has since made its way into the successfully released Disney Dreamlight Valley by Gameloft. Another cancellation mentioned in the report was a Lego Guardians of the Galaxy game developed under the title Project Cosmos. There was also a shooter called Project Rainbow Road, which would have mashed together multiple Warner Brothers IPs. Unfortunately, it utilized the Funko license, which was then lost to 10:10 games. Finally, a mobile port of Lego Worlds, originally being developed by Playdemic, has also seemingly been dropped. It appears that TT Games still aren't out of the woods either. The report goes on to note that a Lego Batman game has been put on hold and that a planned story-centric Mandalorian DLC for the Lego Skywalker Saga is currently in jeopardy at the studio. That one hurts. The primary reason for the cancellations and postponements, the report claims, is due to TT Games' resources being directed toward a much larger project, giving the Skywalker Saga treatment to the Lego Harry Potter series. That is some cock and ball. I want Mandalorian DLC in Skywalker Saga.
I agree. I think the Project Marley one sounds really bizarre. That's kind of interesting to me.
It sounds like that game that you and my siblings used to play on the Wii. That was, in retrospect, probably like Kingdom Hearts knockoff, just made by Disney. But you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe vaguely rings a bell.
It had like Monsters Inc. in it, and like you traveled to different worlds.
You mean Disney Infinity?
Maybe.
It was knockoff Skylanders.
It wasn't that one then, because there was no online stuff or anything, and you didn't have the amiibos, but you just like played the game.
I don't know. I could probably dig it up if I wanted to. It rings a bell though.
It's a locked memory.
I think the we knew about the Guardians of the Galaxy game a while ago. That rings a bell for sure. It makes sense though, to be fair. And also a Funko Pop game sounds like trash, so I'm glad that got canned. I want to get a Mandalorian themed Jeopardy DLC for the Skywalker Saga. Just saying, that would be fun. Like Jeopardy, the TV show, but you play as Mandalorian characters. I also think it's kind of horse shit, or more like this is a very stupid decision they shouldn't be making, to try to give the Skywalker Saga treatment to the Harry Potter games, because they released 2 of those right next to each other, and then they've re-released them as a box set. And the Harry Potter series is kind of in flux right now in terms of 1, popularity, and 2, who the fuck even owns the rights? And also, are the movies continuing? As of today, there's an announcement that there might be a reboot TV show. Like that sounds like a horrible idea right now. Just very, very dumb.
Especially on the popularity point. Like, I would think it's way safer to make even a Mandalorian game that's much smaller in scale, but I would think that would sell more than repackaged Harry Potter yet again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's too long of a process. I mean, it's not like a Harry Potter game wouldn't sell. I mean, look at the news. But also, it just, I don't see that as being necessary. Like, the reason why they did the Skywalker Saga was because, 1, the series ended, kind of, and then 2, like, the games had been released over so many different time periods that they were all kind of a hodgepodge mess. Like,
I mean, the original, looking at how much hoopla there was over Hogwarts Legacy that turned out to be like an actually decent game. Like, why would you even try to touch that with a 10-foot pole?
I have no idea, man. From IGN.com, The Lord of the Rings Gollum will launch on PlayStation 5, PS4, Xbox Series consoles, Xbox One, and PC on May 25th, with the Switch version scheduled for sometime later this year. Gollum was first announced back in 2019 for a 2021 release. The original reveal said that the game would explore events between Gollum's discovery of the ring and the beginning of the events seen in The Lord of the Rings. The game has faced several delays en route to its May release date. IGN saw the game last year, and we weren't super impressed with the hands-off presentation, saying we were left with the underwhelming impression of a simple game that would have landed better in the era when Peter Jackson's trilogy was still in cinemas than it will in 2022. I'm still gonna buy this unless it's literal hot trash, but I don't understand what sort of tech issues they could be having that are taking this long to work out, considering it is apparently such a simple game, and it's not even like it doesn't look that visually difficult. Like it doesn't look like it's not like it's in Unreal 5. I don't.
I have not gotten good vibes from this game at all.
I thought the first trailer was okay.
Low expectations for it.
They just need to go back to make another Shadows game because they patented the stinking Nemesis system after the second game came out, and they haven't used it since. They just patented it to be assholes. Like, go make another game. Come on. Those sold gangbusters.
Yeah, and also we want Sexy Shelob again.
That's true.
From TheVerge.com, EA Sports. Just kidding. EA debuted a new trailer for Star Wars Jedi: Survivor on Monday that gives some hints about the game's story and a preview of some of the action and puzzles you can expect from the final release. Survivor, the sequel to 2019's Star Wars Jedi: Fallen Order, once again stars Jedi Cal Kestis and takes place 5 years after the events of the previous game. The dark times are closing in as Cal Kestis seeks out a safe haven far from the reach of the Empire, according to the trailer's description. Follow Cal and his crew's increasingly desperate fight as the galaxy descends further into darkness. The game is set to launch on April 28th on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC following a short delay.
This continues to look like it's going to be my game of the year. I have a feeling this is going to be a Dark Souls 2, not just because it's Dark Souls Light, which it is. I think this is adding a lot of new gameplay elements, and I don't know if all of them are going to work 100%, but I think it'll be a very ambitious game that the people who like it are going to love it way more than the first one. But I think the general public will think it was an ambitious mess, like Dark Souls 2.
I don't think it's going to be as bad as Dark Souls 2. I see what you mean. They're probably going too big and too far and whatever, but I also don't like it when a sequel game says, oops, he forgot everything from the first game. You have to earn all those skills back again. Like, that's always dumb and gay. So to have progression in a sequel where you have at least some of the powers from the last game, but expand on those, or even just power level, have him more powerful in general compared to the first game. You have to have some sort of progression.
Yeah. More than the gameplay, I'm really just interested in the story. The first game had one of the best stories for Disney Star Wars, period. And it was very well self-contained and also clearly was leading into a very cool story for sequels and stuff. And this looks very mysterious and spoopy and wacky. And Cal Kestis literally went from, yes, I'll have your daughter home to 9 at 9 to your daughter calls me daddy too. Just between the two games. And I think it's funny. They're like, just make him look tired and give him a beard. From GameSpot.com. There's no dancing around it. El Paso, Elsewhere, the new action game from Strange Scaffold, is an unabashed homage to the 2001 seminal pulp noir action classic Max Payne. It's an obvious influence that writer, director, and voice actor Xavier Nelson Jr. isn't shying away from, but is hoping to elevate for a modern audience. During my hands-on preview of the game, he told me, I'm not interested in recreating Max Payne. I'm interested in seeing what Max Payne could be next. And for eclectic developer Strange Scaffold, that means a supernatural neo-noir blood-stained journey through a dimension-shifting motel to stop the world from being overrun by vampires. You play as James Savage, a folklore researcher and drug addict on the hunt for his ex-girlfriend Draculae, who has shacked up in a motel where she plans a ritual to destroy the world. That doesn't sound like your typical noir story, but all the pillars are there. A stoic and flawed protagonist spouting out fourth wall breaking quips in poetic prose, a femme fatale at the center of a melodramatic plot of love, loss, and betrayal, and lots of gun shells, violence, and substance abuse. We're trying to adapt these pulp sensibilities for a modern audience, Zelavier told me, with an emphasis on shifting it into neo-noir. I'm a hardcore fan of the first two Max Payne games, not the third one, and if there's one thing El Paso Elsewhere nailed, it's the familiar feel of its movement and shooting. The way James Savage was front and center in frame, the slightly elevated camera angle, and the flow and motion of his trench coat as they strafed through guns blazing. These are small details, but their subtle nuances were presented in a way that satisfied me as a Max Payne enthusiast. I sprinted through the halls of a maze-like hotel that twisted and transformed around every corner, making it feel more like something out of an evolving nightmare. I followed a blood trail into a bathroom stall door that opened into a blood-soaked industrial kitchen. A hall transformed into a graveyard bathed in green and purple neon lighting. I was able to explore these spaces while rolling, diving, and jumping through the air in slow motion, firing off guns akimbo at werewolves and vampires to the pulsating beats of a horror hip-hop soundtrack. The controls were intuitive to me because of my intimacy with Max Payne. I knew if I hit the tab key, I'd take painkillers to restore my health, or if I right-clicked, I'd go into a bullet time dodge through the air. It feels like Strange Scaffolding is playing to the beat of its own gunfire with El Paso Nowhere. We'll have to wait and see how it all jams out when it releases in fall 2023 for PC and Xbox Series consoles. And this thing sounds so fucking cool.
Real quick, you called it Strange Scaffolding, and it is only Strange Scaffold. But yeah. Yes, it sounds awesome. It sounds like the Blood Dragon to Far Cry.
Ooh. Hot. I like how they kind of diss Max Payne 3. That's funny.
I have tried Blood Dragon a couple of times, and I'm like, I get it on paper, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I hope that this works out well, especially just because I'm diving back into a lot of Remedy games this year and I guess next year. This might, if it's not like really broken, this might end up on my to-do list for next season.
Didn't they announce a couple months ago that they're remaking Max Payne anyway?
I think they're remaking the first game, I believe, but that is actually Remedy.
From PCGamer.com, Electronic Arts has become the latest tech-related company to make significant cuts to its workforce, as it announced today that it is laying off roughly 6% of its workforce. As usual, the layoffs come amidst what sounds like a pretty solid situation for the company. Even amidst macro uncertainty, EA is operating from a position of strength, Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson said. Our business is gaining momentum as we continue to deliver high-quality games and amazing content across some of the largest, most beloved franchises in the world. Citing the continued success and growth of games including FIFA 3, Apex Legends, and The Sims, Wilson said Electronic Arts are leaders in a dynamic industry with new audiences, blah, 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 whitewashing what he's actually doing. But success comes with a price, and in this case, that price is the jobs of several hundred people who work at EA. As we drive greater focus across our portfolio, we are moving away from projects that do not contribute to our strategy, reviewing our real estate footprint, and restructuring some of our teams, Wilson said. These decisions are expected to impact approximately 6% of our company's workforce. This is the most difficult part, and we are working through the process with the utmost care and respect. Electronic Arts didn't say how many people were being put out of work, but the company employed approximately 12,900 people as of March 31st, 2022, according to an SEC filing. Assuming That figure hasn't changed dramatically over the intervening year. That puts the number of lost jobs at around 774. It has changed at least slightly, though. According to a Kotaku report, EA laid off more than 200 quality assurance testers in February.
Is this good for the player?
No.
No. EA continues to be the literal devil.
Yes.
What are the odds?
I love how
you guys were working on.
Go ahead.
What are the odds that these guys were actually working on good projects and they're getting put on to the next FIFA release and another Sims game? Very high. Very high.
I love all the corporate speak of like, we are still such a big name in the industry and we make such great quality product when they are the literal meme.
But they do still make like the most money because EA has all the games that have whales. You know, all the sports games, they get a bajillion dude bros to buy them every year. And they still, I was watching a movie the other night on like cable and I saw an ad for the newest MLB The Show game. And it legitimately looked like you could have run it on a PSP. Like the quality of the sports games are in the dumpster and they still make billions of dollars.
And they laid off 200 playtesters. Oh, sorry, quality assurance testers.
No surprise there.
Love it.
From Kotaku.com, Valve is notoriously stingy with sequels, but hit multiplayer shooter Counter-Strike Global Offensive is finally getting one. Counter-Strike 2 is set to come out sometime this summer as a free update to the existing game with a limited player test that starts Wednesday. The Steam maker is calling it the largest technical leap forward in Counter-Strike's history. What kind of radical new enhancements and game-changing upgrades will the sequel have? Valve isn't saying, at least not yet. All of the game's new features will be revealed when it officially launches this summer, but the road to Counter-Strike 2 begins today as a limited test for select CSGO players. The company wrote on the game's website. During this testing period, we'll be evaluating a subset of features to shake out any issues before the worldwide release. I think this is just a publicity stunt. And I think you fell for it because you're the one who sent this to me. And I think this is going to be a nothing burger. Because if they're not willing to lead with the new features and they're launching it for free on top of the old existing software, this is going to be like fucking... What's a decent example?
I have one if you can't pull it out of your ass.
There's like 3 that I was thinking of and then I forgot them.
Yeah, how about Overwatch 2?
That's what I was about to say. Except you do actually have to pay for Overwatch 2. But like, it's the same thing.
It's a free download, whereas you had to pay for the original Overwatch.
That's weird. But that doesn't play over the existing software, despite it being like identical, except the player count.
I only had to download an update. I didn't have to download a whole new game.
Okay, maybe I'm just really out of the loop on this then. And that didn't turn out very well, did it?
Nope. I didn't say I was super excited for it. It was just like big flash in the pan. Wow, more Counter-Strike content after 20 years. Even
I still hate
it's just
CSGO.
Like a coat of paint and like new play modes or new weapons or something, like at least it's new content to a freaking 20-year-old game or whatever. Like,
I guess I just CSGO is like the cesspool. It's like literally the 4chan of gaming. Like it's a cesspool of just gambling and like toxic retards who sit in their mom's bed. It's like the worst part of the gaming like market.
That's what sucked because I had a really good experience with Valorant when it first came out, and then I lost touch with it for a while, and I came back like a year later, and it had turned into that, and it was very, very upsetting because I kind of really liked Valorant a lot. So, rip. Gaming is hard. It
is. You know what's not hard, though?
Surviving the zombie apocalypse?
I was going to say watching the TV show that we watched. We watched the first season of The Last of Us from HBO Max. It came out last year and this year, I believe. It started premiering. No, I'm dumb. Just this year. I'm dumb. Started in January. It's 9 episodes, and it was written by. It was written and showrun by Craig Mazin, the showrunner and writer for Chernobyl, and Neil Druckmann, the original games writer. It's the game, but as a TV show, and this is like the best fucking thing ever.
Best video game adaptation, anyway.
Easy, easy. No challenge there.
Easy, GG.
Yeah, for seriously. So far, I think it's still the best TV show I've seen this year, but we're only just getting into quarter 2. But like, it's not the beyond any specific detail. The easy thing that I heard someone describe this as was it's very accurate, but the only real shift that it actually has from the original game's story is it makes the subtext the text. And that's the biggest change it has, other than some like tweaking of the plot. The subtext of the original game being about global warming is now the explicit text of the TV show. The side characters that we see in the game, that it's implied that they were gay, now we get to actually see them exist. Like, it just takes the things that were kind of buried and it just makes them the text of the show. And that's like the biggest change that there is.
I caught a very small percentage of that on my own. It's difficult to word. I knew about the sexuality subtext of the game, and that's fine. I didn't know about all the global warming stuff, but that's common when you get a movie or TV adaptation, is to have things explained to you a little bit more clearly.
Yes.
I would think so.
For sure. Common. No, I think that's kind of like the key to why it's actually a good adaptation.
I would like to say that I just loved the texture of the show. There's so much detail. The first episode, I think, opens with like a Carson show style news interview, and it looks and sounds perfect. The infected at varying stages of the infection have so much detail that you pick up like on your own and subtly, just like little things, probably from like experience with zombie stories, but also just like characters would be walking through an abandoned building and there would be an infected sitting against the wall that had like grown as a single mushroom into the wall and was growing up the wall. But it's a person that's infected with mushrooms, and it's so gross and it's so cool. A couple times when somewhat mature infected would attack someone with mushrooms growing out of their mouth, and the mushrooms are moving like fingers, like trying to grab at the person, the victim's face. Like, so much fantastic attention to detail, at least visually, that that's what kept me. No, that's what had me like just keep watching instead of playing on my phone or watching the show like in the background of normal life. Like, I was invested because there was so much to see.
For sure. I definitely think the visual aesthetic that it captures the game in a way that doesn't feel derivative. The game can be a little early 2010s grayscale apocalypse looking. It's still a very pleasing game to look at, but sometimes it's not. It could definitely be a little bit more interesting visually. The clickers are great, but like a lot of it is just it's what you'd expect. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, but I think they evolved the aesthetic a little bit more for the TV show and they kind of cranked it up an additional 10% and it looks fantastic from like an aesthetics point of view. The color balancing and the types of props that they're it looks so good. Like it's bonkers.
I was handicapped because of my life situation outside of the show. I watched 99% of this on my phone. Oof. And I really hate doing that. I watched 5 minutes of the show on your TV, and so much of it had this weird effect. It looked like it looked amazing. It looked almost like 3D, like there were layers in the picture. And I don't have any more words to describe it, but I was amazed. It looked fantastic.
Huh. I have no idea what you're talking about.
You were there for it.
Was I really though?
Yes.
I actually have no recollection of this.
Yes, scientific words and stuff. They did some black magic and shit. And I was weird. Like, yeah, it looks like it.
Huh, that's weird. I have no idea. The only real visual hiccups that I noticed to nitpick is in episode 2 when they're going through the city of it's not Boston, but it's near Boston. Whatever. They're going through a big city, and I think it's the only part where the green screen is kind of rough. Other than that, the visual quality of this show does not dip at all. The spaces are extremely large and vibrant. They're extremely tactile. I don't know if they used the stagecraft for this at all. I think it might have just been, good old-fashioned green screen, but the framing is fantastic. It's all so consistent between shot to shot and scene to scene. It never feels like it's on a set at all. Like not because that's the bottom of the bar, but like this was shot post-COVID, like the whole thing.
I counter that with the scene with the giraffe looked pretty jank.
Okay, that's true. That giraffe is real though, so I don't care. Okay. They've physically stuck a giraffe in a blue screen.
Around it looked funny.
Yeah, but okay, that's fair. But like, they put a giraffe on set through a blue screen. I've seen the image. It's real. What the fuck? It's bonkers. One thing that I really appreciate on this one from like a behind the scenes sort of angle is how many of the voice actors and motion capture actors from the game series that they reused for this, mostly in different roles from their original characters, but they still kind of kept it all in the family. So there's two different types of this. So we have Merle Dandridge was Marlene. She played Marlene in the games, but the visual difference isn't that big a deal, so they kept the same person. But Ashley Johnson played Ellie in the games, but she's way too old for that now. So she played Ellie's mom in the TV show. Like, that sort of stuff is really cool. I really like that.
I didn't know any of that.
Really?
True story.
Huh. I think the thing with that actually makes it really weird for my brain is because Ashley... So the game model for for Ellie in both games, and even the remastered version of 1, does not really look like Ashley Johnson at all, which is fine. She did the voice and she did the motion capture, but like they chose a different facial model. But she actually looks really similar to Bella Ramsey, who does not look at all like game Ellie. It's extremely weird, but it's just
I noticed that. It was pretty cool.
Like cosmic strangeness, and I love it. I don't get it, but it's really cool.
I was really, really mad at myself because I'm not good at the Boomer, that's the actor game. But I let out an audible, no shit, when I found out in episode 4 that Joel's waifu was played by Anna Torv, who is the star of my favoriteest TV show ever, Fringe.
That's his Fringe
And
mommy. I knew that's where you were going with that.
yes. But also she voiced the main character in Heavenly Sword, at the very least the shitty anime movie, but I think also the video game too. So, and a bunch of other video games, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, big voice actress,
Yes.
but also Fringe.
Yes. I appreciate that they didn't like action it up. They really kept the encounters with the clickers down to a minimum, so they would be extremely impactful when they did happen. I'm sure that could have potentially been like a logistics thing, whereas the costumes were really hard to make and keep in good condition and whatever, so they couldn't have an action scene every 5 minutes. But I'm so glad that they did, because the drama here is so fucking. Even though I've seen this, I've played it like twice, and most of it's very very close to how it was in the game. I'm still riveted by it.
Um, I have tried to play the game and have not been able to finish it because I don't know. My brain is special and I want to like it a lot, but I'm not good at stealth. Uh I really wanted more clicker stuff. I want to keep saying zombie stuff. I want more zombie stuff. But I understand why. I sent Spencer a really good article, I guess, on YouTube about how the violence of the show is really reined in. It's disciplined, and it doesn't really show a whole lot of graphic violence until the very end. And it feels like a release, but it's also like a commentary on the characters' actions and motivations and blah 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 blah. All the stuff that makes Spencer hard. It's good. That's all well and good, but I wanted more violent zombie action stuff.
Yeah.
I know it's dumb. I really do like this show and how it turned out. Maybe it's just because I haven't been burned out by Walking Dead. I don't know.
I don't know. Which, so I mean, yeah, on that point, actually, I think this is basically the second draft of this story, because the original writer had a decade to think about their choices, see how people reacted, and then write it again. This is similar in a sense to A Series of Unfortunate Events. The TV show was written and I think show ran by the original writer, so all of the choices were made by the original. It's a second draft. I just think that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because
same thing with Sandman.
Yeah, it's another good example. I think and that's another thing with Sandman, is pretty much everything that was changed from the comics is either a physical, well, we can't really just show it like that because it's not a comic book, or they made it more obvious and they removed the subtext from it a little bit. So it's like it's actually very comparable in that sense. And I think that really worked towards the final decision. This is a very a very well known. The game doesn't give you a choice, and the game ends on a big fuck you. You know, you now need to think about what the fuck just happened, and it's a pretty well known thing. And I think that this works a little bit better because the rest of the show points more in that direction, even if you already know what's going to happen at the end and you know that they're not going to drastically change the plot. Like, I feel like it hones in a little bit more on the not just the relationship between the two characters, but using the side characters and the other stories to point in the same direction of trying to choose between, recovering from trauma and making your own happiness and like all that sort of fun stuff. And I think it honestly makes the impact of watching Pedro Pascal run through a hospital shooting people more impactful than you having to do it as gameplay, which says a lot, because the gameplay of you having to just kill civilians is like a lot. That's a pretty rough segment of the game. I don't know, when it was over. I watched this twice, by the way. When it was over, and the hard cuts at the end with that last little interaction on a hillside, and it like cold cuts to being just like done. And now you need to interpret how that interaction was and think about what it's gonna be like later. There's so much to it, and like some of these themes are very well tread subjects because of zombie media, especially. But like, I don't know, some of that stuff just doesn't get old because there aren't clean, easy answers for it. This especially came up when the second game came out, and it really made people understand that there are all of the ways to navigate the situations make sense and are understandable, and there's definitely some that are worse than others, but like there aren't any clean, good positions to take on it, because every way you twist the situation around, someone's still not something's still not right, And I think that the fact that they really hammered down like him being put in that type of a situation and making the choice that he did, and us wanting to see how that turns out, is very impactful.
This series loves to be the Kobayashi Maru. What? It's true. It's like half of the intention of this universe, it seems, is to be like the same thing with The Witcher. Is like there's no good answer. Someone's going to lose out, and you have to be the bad guy because you make a decision.
Yes. I just really respect it for hammering down harder instead of trying to soften it, which makes me interested in how season 2 is going to turn out, because one, that was contentious, and two, there's a lot of criticisms I think that can be made of the second game without actually changing any of the decisions, just how they're presented. But it is a lot of that, like, but if you change how shittily it's presented, does it change the choice, and does it make the player as alienated? Because that's what the game wanted you to do. It wanted you to be pissed off and angry at the game. So I'm curious how he's going to write that for the next season.
It's interesting too, because Neil Druckmann's had a lot less time to stew on part 2 versus part 1. So
this is true.
I don't know. I avoided all of the controversy about part 2 because I literally could not have cared less. But having finally made it all the way through the story of part 1, I'm curious to know what happens. The only thing that I know does happen in part 2 is that you, the player character, kill a lot of dogs, and I'm not okay with that.
I am curious how that's going to get handled. There's a lot of stuff. It doesn't make me nervous. Despite I really liked part 2 and I have a lot of respect for it, even though it's kind of rough around the edges. Like, I feel confident that it'll at least be a bit better here, just with however it's presented. And I think it's interesting because we're still getting rumors that there's going to be a third game. It hasn't been confirmed whether or not it's going to happen or not. Neil Druckmann keeps being vague. So I'm curious what's going to happen if basically the third game pops up in like 2 years and then they pump out the third season like right after it comes out. I'm curious what that plan is from him.
This show dealt with a lot of topics. It had a lot of political commentary that didn't overstay its welcome. It had, I don't know. I thought it was funny when I finally watched the last episode or two, and I texted Spencer, "Cannibalistic COVID cult classic."
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. Actually, they made
kind of cheese, but at the same time, it's very intentional, very intentionally pointing fingers, and I think it's funny.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with that. That's the other thing, is it makes David, the leader of the cult, more explicitly a pedo. That was implied in the game, but the show just does it, and it's like that's a thing. It's just like every point of like, I don't want to say necessarily ambiguity, because I think kind of framing it as like removing the ambiguity from the game, I don't think that's entirely accurate. I think there's something to be said about like the fact that the two gay guys are like, it's the only optional part of the game you can just not find. I feel like you could probably you cannot pick up on that when you play the game. You can just not see that at all. Like it's played so quietly, in the background, really hard for subtext, and it's like, that's kind of weird. I don't know what that says exactly. It just seems kind of weird. So like when it comes to the other bits of subtext that they made text, I don't think it's necessarily removing ambiguity. I think it's just not being afraid to approach the subject matter, even though the game is more violent and more gory. Like,
hey, this has been popular for 13 years now. We're just gonna come right out and say, yeah, this is what we were talking about.
yeah. It's definitely a difficult line to walk, but I like that. Just a little change that I liked just because I liked it was changing Sam to be younger and deaf. Sam and Henry are really cool characters, and I like I think that's the plot line that's changed the most from the game. But I think it was Neil Druckmann, because there's like the after show where Neil Druckmann jerks himself off about how cool his writing choices are. And they were talking about, I think it was Craig Mazin, the other writer, who was like, what if we changed this thing and like we made Sam like deaf? And it just was a choice that they went with. And I don't know why, but it's been popping up so much lately in stuff I've been watching, where there's been a lot more deaf characters lately, and they're actually showing ASL on screen. It's cool. I don't know what this trend is, but I like it.
I could tell where that was going almost immediately, and it still like almost brought a tear from my eye when he turned his head and showed that he had turned into zombie form. Like, it was like, just such a letdown, because you were hoping against hope that it wouldn't happen, despite knowing that it would.
Yep.
I don't know. Such good storytelling.
For sure.
The theme song's a banger.
Oh, that was the other thing. The score is composed by the video game's composer and someone else. So it's mostly reused themes, but I thought it was very good. And yeah, the intro slaps.
I definitely did not skip it at the beginning of every episode, despite getting the prompt. I was like, no, I really enjoy watching it and listening to it. It's great.
And you see the little mushroom stalks, they look like the two people in the show. It's so I love it. I love it. It's nice to have something good to talk about for once. In addition to watching a good thing, did you play a good thing? Maybe? Positive things?
I played a game. Almost a whole game. Man. Child of Light was released for PC, Wii U, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One in April of 2014, and the adored PS Vita in June of 2014. It was released onto the Nintendo Switch in October of 2018. It was developed and published by Ubisoft.
Did you bring your PS Vita with you on this trip?
No, I'm having an issue with my Vita where it only charges to half the battery, and I need the special plastic chip to separate the glass screen from the plastic body to get in there and change a wire or something, and I don't have the plastic chip. So,
Damn.
otherwise I would have, for sure. It would not have been the first time. I'm getting most of my information from Wikipedia, by the way, because that is the source of all professional journalists. The story is in the late 1800s, early 1900s. An Austrian duke has a child named Aurora. A little while later, Aurora's mom dies. Time goes by. The duke remarries, and then suddenly and mysteriously, Aurora dies. She wakes up in a fairy tale world with a little floating blue guy, Igniculus, as a friend. I would say picture Navi from Ocarina of Time. Hello! And yes, you need to include the sound of hey every time I say Igniculus. Hey! Igniculus. Hey! I require it. Igniculus. Watch out! Soon she's given a quest: gather the sun, moon, and stars in order to go home. A couple of things happen that I skipped over. Along the way, she finds a whole party of friends with their own quests that help the friends help her throughout the story. The visuals of this game look really cool. It kind of reminds me of like a children's fairy tale book that was painted before the book was printed. The world is quite interactable with treasure chests hidden everywhere, some that you can only reach with Igniculus. Hey! There are dark parts of levels that you can illumine with your befriended Firefly. There are illusory walls that I wrote that because I couldn't come up with any other term for it. Just walls that you have to walk or fly through to like progress down the pathway to find the treasure that's hidden behind it, just like any other Metroidvania. Characters are animated well. The only thing I could try to complain about is how floaty Aurora's hair was at certain times, but it really wasn't that bad by any means. It just seems like a problem with the engine that it was in. Characters mostly talked to each other with pop text box I had to click through, but every once in a while they would have balloons in their head, and almost every time that happened, they would overlap. It didn't look very good. It kind of made it difficult to read some of the balloons because the timing was off and it was a little big. But really, those were my only complaints about this game. For sound design, I gotta be honest, I played a lot of the muted while I was on lunch at work, but what I did hear sounded great. The music is fitting to the atmosphere of each level. I would say that enemy sounds got a little old in certain instances that I'll talk about later, but spells or attacks sound impactful. Sound is good. Gameplay is the meaty part of my review. This game is a turn-based RPG. Aurora flies through the air looking for treasure and progression through the story. There are enemies patrolling everywhere. If she walks into the patrol from behind, she's surprising the patrol and gets an advancement in combat. The reverse is the patrol walks into her. There is a bar at the bottom of the screen showing how much time each character and enemy has before their next action, which I really appreciate in a turn-based RPG. There were only 2 people from my party allowed to fight at the same time, while the enemies were allowed up to 3 at the same time. Each character has their own build, of course. Aurora has a big sword, but also light magic, which is powerful against dark. Other characters are big tanks, healers, elemental magicians, etc. There are ways to buff or debuff characters to affect the time between their attacks. Igniculus also gets in on the fight in a cool way. You can have him shine his light on someone in your party to heal them, or he can shine his light on an enemy to blind them and slow them down. He can fly around the arena and collect health and mana for the party, and also light for himself. I'm not very experienced in turn-based RPGs, or maybe I've touched a bunch and I'm just not good at them. I don't know. I like having the ability to choose if I want to fight or not, as opposed to a Pokemon game where I'm trying to get from A to B and I keep getting ambushed by random patrols. The drawback is that my characters didn't get appropriately leveled like they should for the end game. I saw a complaint online that I feel is fair. Sometimes when you initiate a fight with a flying firebird expecting a fire-based fight, he would have a big rock troll and a water-based spider with him in the arena, and that can all affect how the fight goes. I never got a cheap death because of it, but it can be annoying. I haven't even mentioned the oculi system. There are magic rocks of different colors. You get small ones, you can combine them to make bigger versions, or different colored rocks. These obviously can affect elemental attacks or defense, but also XP or time between attacks, defense against physical or magical attacks, etc. I liked this system, except there wasn't an in-game list of recipes. Even if it had showed me only what I had discovered for recipe, mixing this rock with that rock gets you a different rock, I would have been happy. I'm sure Colin would be yelling at me right now like, you idiot, it's basic color black magic. You mix red and blue to get purple, and that's what gives you magical defense. It makes all the sense in the world, blah, 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 blah. But I does not remember all those recipes. Colin can eat my ass. There are also skill trees for every character that were done really, really well. I chose the build for each character because I couldn't have all the skill points. Obviously, the tank, but is defensive power that doesn't make you go back on the timeline when you're hit. You are still able to attack within the time that it normally runs. Or do you power up his offensive ability that has a chance to paralyze opponents when they're hit by the tank? It's still a choice within the same basic build. In closing, because I skipped some combat, I was at level 38 by the final boss, and the internet advises at least 10 more levels, despite being on the simplest difficulty, story mode. However, I completed all 10 side quests. I found all but 4 out of 15 floating papers. There were confessions. It was just extra story that didn't make sense because I didn't have all the pieces. That puts me at 12 hours. I got this game for $5 on my Switch, and I'm quite happy with my purchase. I'm not sure if I would replay it anytime soon, but I'm probably going to hunt down a YouTube video or two to explain the story to me because I still have a couple questions. For example, level 8 or 9 out of 10, Aurora very clearly becomes a young woman. But she was like 6 or 8 when she died. And
That's
she's
weird.
in a fairy tale world. So I think something else is happening, but I don't understand what.
Wacky.
It was a very odd change. So I don't know. I'm still confused about the story. This definitely seems like something up your alley.
It's been on my to-do list for quite a while. I just haven't gotten to it. I might even own a digital copy for computer or something. I don't know.
What kills me is that there was a game I had on my Vita that I thought was this game, but definitely wasn't. And now I don't know what that game was.
Weird.
I am very special.
$5 is definitely a steal, though.
Yes, thank you.
Wicked cool. You know what else is wicked cool?
I was going to say, you know who else is special?
Our patrons over at patreon.com/dimecomicbros network. They get early access to all of our podcast episodes, as well as exclusive access to Dime Comic Bros and Dime Gaming Bros Happy Hour, which is our additional exclusive segment to Patreon, where we just shoot the shit, have a drink, talk about whatever random stuff pops up, as well as a whole bunch of other cool tiers. So a thank you to Caitlin and Jeff Lawrence. Also, a big thank you to our partners over at Jetpack Comics and Games in downtown Rochester, New Hampshire. Over at the Megastore, they have all sorts of cool gaming and comic-related stuff. You can buy all sorts of different comics and graphic novels there. They have indie comics, Dark Horse, Image, The Big Two, all sorts of crazy stuff over there. They also have, board games, tabletop games, RPGs, Pokemon cards, Magic cards, all of the fun nerd stuff you could ever imagine. They have it, and if they don't have it, they can get it for you. If you do end up stopping by, just let them know that we sent you. It would be greatly appreciated. I have no... Oh, wait. Next month, the two of us are going to be discussing the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And I'm pretty confident I'm going to be reviewing Control from Remedy Games. I have no clue what Jacob's doing. So make sure to tune in for that episode next month. Thank you for listening. That seagull's really making some noise.
That ain't a seagull. That's a fighter jet. And I'm sure he's got a buddy behind him. The day after my birthday. Man, I hate this program.
At some point in the near future, we'll probably look into other options. I refuse to get the bourgeois version of Zoom. We will continue using the proletariat version of Zoom until the day I die, or we change programs. But no, there will be no bourgeois Zoom.
Please excuse my American propaganda.
I don't know, man. I think you are currently committing a war crime. Which, to be fair, the Master Chief did do in Halo the series. He did commit a war crime by sleeping with the enemy. That is he broke the Geneva Conventions.
He fucked a heretic. It is unacceptable.